Hello and welcome to December's Patreon special of Wrestling 20 Years Ago, powered by Show and Tell with Tunes. You know what that means? It's a music episode. So it's me and my good buddy, Eric. How the devil are we, sir, on this
Hello.
fine day?
Let's get back in our DeLorean and put on our leg warmers and our headbands and head back to the era of tin can overproduced drums and vocal dubbing. Let's do it.
Yes, we are not wrestling 20 years ago. No, no. We are wrestling 34 years ago, as we are doing 1984's The Wrestling Album. Yep, we are going back all the way to the very first WWF CD. Well, I say CD, vinyl as it was in that time, which came out at the height of the rock and wrestling era. And it features mostly theme tunes from the wrestlers around the time. Somehow, this album did peak in the US Billboard charts in the number 84 spot in the album sales. However, not one of its singles received any radio play or cracked the top 100. The album did get a reissue in 1998, so it does fit into the 20-year time limit with a CD issue by Coach Records. And there was also a 30th anniversary edition repress on vinyl that came out for Record Store Day in June 2015. So we will start with pre me sending you over and we're doing it for the show. Any history with this album at all, Eric?
No, no, I was born well after this. Well, not well after, but a few years after this album even came out, and I didn't become a wrestling fan until many years after that. And so this one kind of passed me by. Hulkamania was something that I rediscovered later on, really. But no, obviously you hear these songs or most of them, and the ones that are still on the WWE Network when you go back and watch the old stuff like Real American, you hear everywhere. But no, this is my first spin through this record, and I really had no idea of even what the whole concept of it was. And you know, um, quite the interesting journey, I'll say that.
Yeah, this is the same age as me, and thankfully I've aged better than 80s pop sound systems and that drum styling. Don't know what it was about 80s pop and terrible electronic drums, but that's not why we're here. We are here to go through it, all 10 of the wonderful songs on this album. And we start with a a staple of these sorts of things. The let's get everyone on the roster in a room and put them on the record with The Land of a Thousand Dances performed by pretty much everyone on the roster, which you'll hear a little snippet of now. So, Eric, this is the quintessential sort of setup for any wrestling album is get the wrestlers on, make them sort of cut promos to sort of rhythm so it can be put behind a musical backing.
Yes, this was the longest 5-minute song in the history of music. Also, um, I don't know what I don't know what to say. I, sure, this is how you set up a wrestling album, but this is so terrible, man. Like, it's just the first beat of the first drum just transplants you back to 1984, and then you just realize this is going to be something that was produced by somebody wearing a white leather jacket. Um, yeah, I kept listening because I had to for this Patreon special, but I can't say that I was very optimistic after this first one. It got a lot better. It does get a lot better. So yeah, stick with it after Land of a Thousand Dances if you haven't taken your Excedrin for the migraine yet.
It it's one of those of with this, it starts as they're trying to go on about dances. There's a bit about doing the mashed potato, doing the twist, doing the jive, and doing the alligator, and then it gets to the point where Sheik and Nikolai Volkov come on. and any semblance of making this about music or anything is gone. They just basically cut incoherent promos that even at that point is just not even in rhythm with the rest of the song, and I'm just like, oh, that's where this idea came from, and oh, that's amazing but awful in exactly the same measure. Um, it's one of those of it has to be heard at least once.
Yeah, yes, it does.
It's
You all must now hear it because we had to.
yeah, it's one of those of you're never gonna want to go back to it, but you're missing something in life if you don't listen to it. But it's okay because as Patreon subscribers, I have something to tell you at the end of the show, which will, mean that you have the power to do that. What I will just say before we go into the next song is the one thing that goes through this whole album, and when you listen to it as a whole piece of work, carries you through the half an hour that this album lasts for, is Mean Gene, Vince, and the Body slating each other between each song. And that was, I was like, oh, this is an interesting little skit for the first song. The fact it happens after every song, and that's the highlight of this album, says a lot. I would rather, I'm going to spoil the ending here. I would rather have half an hour of them two just going off at each other than most of the songs on this album.
Like a comedy album. Yeah. Yeah.
I would take that in a heartbeat, but it definitely helps the bad songs by having this at the end of it.
It definitely does. It's I thought it was very funny. I just thought that in some of the instances they were very, very strong in their burial of some of the stuff, true or not, and Jesse's a heel. But some of this I was kind of wondering, did they do this after the fact when they realized that without any context, this is just going to be kind of a terrible wrestling pop album? I don't know. There were just some instances, and I can't recall any offhand, obviously, but where I just felt like, yeah, that's exactly how I felt about this song. I wonder if there's a little bit of truth in that from Vince. I wouldn't put that past him, even in '84.
Yeah. So we next have the Junkyard Dog singing "Grab Them Cakes." So you'll just heard a little bit of Junkyard Dog there. This one, at this point, I was very close to messaging you saying we've made a mistake. Let's just not do this. This has no redeeming features. This song is fucking awful.
So you know how in wrestling you have a garbage man, and it's what Vince McMahon thinks a garbage man is, and you have a hockey player, and it's what Vince McMahon thinks a hockey player is. This
Yeah.
song is the audible equivalent of what a wrestling promoter would think funk music is. So I kind of got it from that sense. It sounds not too dissimilar from some of those early WrestleMania uh, 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 songs, the promo songs with the saxophones and the
Mm.
funky beats and things like that. Yeah, this came out of that same warehouse for sure. But my biggest thing about this song was, okay, this is what they did better on later wrestling albums, right? The songs were so much shorter, and they just kind of realized if the song's only got 90 seconds of juice in it, it's only going to be 90 seconds long. No Chance in Hell is only like 90 seconds long, and
Yeah.
you can just loop it. These songs, like, they go 4 or 5 minutes, and it's like, Jesus, cut it off. And at 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, this would have been something tolerable. But again, like the last one, it just kept going, man. So better than the last one, but still needed to be trimmed by about 50%.
Yeah, it's hard to say that because obviously, I wasn't in America in the South. I don't know what the musical canvas for that time and place in '84 was like, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't this. It sounds sort of back end 70s, but with 80s production. And it's just awful. But coming out of it, we do get a wonderful skit. So, you know, it's not all that bad. So we get the next skit is where Jesse Ventura basically slates Barry Windham and Captain Mike Rotunda for somehow actually having good music. And surprisingly to most people, when you hear this next song, you'll be, why is the US Express got it? That's right. Originally, this was the US Express music before a certain person in yellow decided that he wanted it instead. We have Derringer and Real American.
Yeah, baby.
Which you will hear a little bit of right now. So, what is there to say about this song? If you ever watched 80s WWF, you will know this song. This is synonymous with 80s wrestling, WWF, and Hulk Hogan. It seems really weird in the context that at this point, this wasn't Hogan's music. This was going to be just used for a random tag team of Mike Rotunda and Barry Windham when both were really fucking green and in their infancy.
Could you imagine like the Headbangers having Stone Cold Steve Austin's theme music? That's kind of what that would have been like. That's so weird to think about.
Yeah, it's pretty much, you know, giving the glass shatters to the Headbangers and then going, no, let's take that off them, and oh, it works better for Stone Cold.
So, Lacey, let me ask you: is "Real American" the best walkout song in the history of wrestling?
No, because that honor goes to Billy Gunn and Us Man. Clearly, it's one of those of I have different music for each period of wrestling.
Right.
So the Hulkamania area, there is two. There's this, and there's Warriors music.
I'd throw Savage in there too.
Yeah, I will let you have that as a third in that sort of list, because as someone from England, you see Hogan. Other than he doesn't come out in red, white, and blue at that point, he is in the yellow. He is Mr. America, so he should have a song that's, you know, if it isn't the American national anthem, I am a real American. You know, it is everything that synonymizes 80s Hogan, you know, beating up the foreign invader and the big foreign heel. And, you know, it is so him. As like Warriors theme being so frantic, fast, and aggressive is him. It was the perfect match for Hogan. To know that it actually was never really meant to be Hogan's makes you think, how did that happen? And this was written especially for the Fed. You know, Derringer didn't do this as an album song, and the Fed went, "Oh, can we have that?" This was specifically written for the US Express. Because I sort of looked into it, because I was like, was this just like something weird and wonderful, and then, you know, the magic of history's changed it over. No, Vince asked Derringer, we want a song for this tag team. They're called the US Express. They're going to be, you know, good old boy American college heroes. And this is what they came back with.
God, imagine how good the song would have been if he actually said it was going to be used for Hulk Hogan.
I know. We could have had something even more epic. But as same sort of question to you, obviously, you said to me, what is this synonymous with like all things wrestling, and, you know, as you said, maybe the greatest walkout song of all time. To yourself, where would you put it?
It's up there. It's really up there for me. It might be the tops. I just think I think there's only two that really can qualify for the top, and that's this and Stone Cold, because I think those are the only two songs that they just have that pathological impact on a crowd at their peak. And I don't think even guys like Warrior or Savage, who had really great songs and that were synonymous with their characters, and even later on, I would even throw guys like Triple H and Orton and Batista and those mid 2000 era guys now who are kind of nostalgic again as having great walkout songs. But there were only really two, I think, that were perfect, were absolutely perfect for their character at that time, and that's this and Stone Cold. And I think if you split the eras, I think those are the two. My favorite wrestling theme song of all time is Owen Hart's 94 to 97 theme, but that's a whole other story.
We're not talking about how amazing songs are. We're just sort of, synonymous ones.
Yeah, no, I think this in Austin. I don't think you need to pick one between the two, but I think it's these two.
And how different could it have been if Hogan hadn't kicked up a fuss? And we'll hear it later on, what he was coming out to at the time, and this would have gone the way of the US Express and disappeared very quickly, as they would go off to go back into NWA, because obviously Captain Mike and Barry Windham very much more synonymous with 80s NWA / WCW than the Fed. Just think, if Hogan hadn't have kicked up a fuss and said, "I want that," we could have never sort of really had this go beyond a mediocre tag team.
I think this is one instant where we can thank Hulk Hogan for sticking his nose where it didn't belong.
Pretty much.
This one worked out for you, Hulkster.
One of the few. So we follow that up with arguably the only true musician on this album that actually have as a wrestling background, Jimmy Hart, and his song "Eat Your Heart Out," Rick Springfield, which you'll hear a little bit of now. So when I first heard this, I was like, who the fuck is Rick Springfield? It wasn't until the end of it, when he mentions the fact about the song Jesse's Girl, I was like, oh, it's the guy that wrote Jesse's Girl. This just seems to be is this maybe the first ever diss track? Because clearly Jimmy doesn't like him.
Yeah, Jimmy's homies down at the Tiki Bar on South Beach. The Beans and Tater crew. This is so super weird, man. Like, this Jimmy Hart is a good singer. Like, he's singing this song, and he is a professional musician. But this song is so bad. It's too poorly constructed to be a satire, and it's not funny enough to really be a parody. So it's just kind of this bad, like you said, diss track that probably flew over the head of a lot of people who listened to it in 1984, and flies over the head of nearly everybody who listens to it now who wasn't around back then. So yeah, this is a big dip in the record, but yeah, interesting. Jimmy Hart, we know he wrote all the notable WCW tracks, or most of them, and he had his hand in the cookie jar a lot in the Fed too, and he was there. I mean, the dude,
Shawn Michaels is his theme.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, the dude's like vaudevillian. He can do it all, but this is not one of his better offerings from a song writing standpoint.
Yeah, as you say, it may be one of those ones that sort of went under the radar of what he was actually trying to do, and as we said, there may be some real sort of issues that started at a random tiki bar, probably before, because at this point he's probably not up Hogan's arse and all around him in the way that he is now. So, but whatever did Rick Springfield do, other than obviously Jesse's Girl? Well, anything wrestling wise that could have caused this sort of level of beef?
I don't know. Sammy Hagar wrote the only other song that Rick Springfield's known for, so not much.
Fair enough. We follow that up with
It's not even music.
No, it's a thing. It's another one
Turn
like
the
Land
turn the
of
record over here is what I say.
Well, it's another one like Land of a Thousand Dances that you do have to listen to at least once, just to feel our pain. And that's Captain Albano featuring George Animal Steel, Captain Lou's History of Music. Wow. Just take a listen yourselves, and we'll be back in a minute. So, Eric, how did this happen? Did no one just go? We can't use that.
This song, I felt physically older from the time that it started to the time that it ended. Like this song, like aged me. It was like a picture of Dorian Gray, but my ears. Like, this isn't. Why are we even spending time talking about this piece of shit? But I will say the commentary after this particular song by the crew was some of the best on the record. So there's that.
Yeah, it has to be said though. If there is anything to just sort of not listen to, definitely this one. We are following that up with, if you ever did get to watch the wonderful cartoon Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, you will know this as Hulk Hogan's theme, and at the time was his entrance music. And it's bland as fuck, and you'll hear it now. So yeah, thank fuck Hogan did put his nose in, because could you imagine him WrestleMania 6 going against the Ultimate Warrior coming down to this?
The Trans-Siberian Orchestra? No.
You know, it has its purpose for the TV show as the cartoon entrance. That it's fine. It's perfectly servable and it's a good bit of music. But for the guy, especially at this point in '84, he has just won the title. Hulkamania is now starting, and you think that musically this is what he should be represented by.
You know what this kind of reminds me of is right around in our timeline now on the 20 years ago is when Triple H was kind of going back and forth between the corporation and DX, and he leaves DX, but they don't have music lined up for him once he's out of DX, and so he just has some generic as fuck rock music for a couple weeks, and then they kind of start to figure it out. And then he's got My Time for a while, and then he settles into his later themes. It's like, you know, once a wrestler gets their theme that matches them, it's perfect. But it does take some moving and some shaking from time to time, because Hogan also used Eye of the Tiger, as we know. So, I mean, they were kind of not. They didn't settle on anything for a few years there, and I think Triple H is the guy that I think most is the most recent guy who kind of bounced around with theme songs before he found something that really really sticks. And now Triple H has two of the best theme songs in wrestling. So good for him.
Yeah, I was gonna say I actually quite liked him when he started using My Time, because at that point I was getting into sort of nasty, gritty, sort of the more heavier side of nu metal, and it fit into what I was into as a 16-year-old angry kid. So yeah, but they then had Motorhead, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it doesn't get better than that.
We followed this up with a high point in this album, and your track of choice, Roddy Piper's For Everybody. You won't hear a little snippet of it now because we're going to play it in full at the end. This is it's pretty much just a spoken word, but Piper's cadence and the way that he delivers this is so good. It could be hip hop or to a acoustic punk song. You could put any genre of music behind this, and I think this would work.
This was like the best Huey Lewis and the News song that never was. Um, yeah, you can't listen to the song and tell me that after a boozy Saturday night, probably sometime in the summer, throw this on a mix. If this song came up, it would just sound like another like party song. You know what I mean? This was the only one on the record where I was like, well, it's not such a wrestling song like Real American that that it would be immediately recognizable as that. But it's like the only other song on the record that is like just kind of a good middle of the road like 80s tune. And yeah, this was fine. And plus, shout out to Rowdy Roddy Piper, Portland wrestling megastar.
He is your local homeboy. Yeah, this one is definitely a massive highlight on this album. And yes, you'll hear it all very, very soon. We follow that up with Mean Gene doing a version of Tutti Frutti, which you'll hear now. So for a song that's synonymous with the 50s, with a guy that looks like he's just come out of the 50s, it is generic karaoke by numbers of a classic song. It's okay. It's not amazing, but again, for a bunch of wrestlers, obviously I know Mean Gene isn't really a wrestler. I don't know where he came from originally, before he's just sort of turned up in the AWA as a mic man. I don't know if he has some sort of musical background or anything like that, but he can carry a tune and pulls this off to a reasonable standard. It's just it was culturally relevant in the 50s, not so much in the 80s.
Yeah, it's just kind of like hey, there's Granddad singing Granddad's favorite song. You know what I mean? Yeah, because Gino Okerlund was kind of like, and Monsoon to another degree were kind of like your wrestling grandpas in the '80s, I guess. It makes sense to me. I don't know. I think, does he still use this when he shows up from time to time as his theme music?
Yes.
So Gene Okerlund, does he carry the title of having the longest continuous fed theme song if Hogan wasn't using Real American when this first came out? I wonder about that. Interesting things that you think about when you stumble across old gems like this record here.
It probably is, has to be said, because no one else is still about from that period that is either didn't have a different theme or at any point had a different persona that needed a different theme.
I think
Because
him and Hillbilly, I guess, would be the two, because Hillbilly's on here too.
that's pretty much it. And speaking of that, the next song is the wonderful Hillbilly Jim, Don't Go Messing with a Country Boy, which you'll hear that in full at the end. Anyone that's been watching along with us in Timeline will know this as the wonderful theme for Henry O and Phineas I. Godwin. And this has been used a few times for other redneck hillbilly characters. We're going to chuck Hillbilly Jim with them as the manager. They can use Hillbilly Jim's song. But it's pretty much a timeless song. It's basic, Southern song that would fit in the 40s, the 60s, the 80s, and even now.
It's the only song on the album that doesn't age. You're absolutely right. Hey, so I'm glad you brought up the Godwins, because that's who I associate this song with, because I'm a child of the new generation era. Yes, and I live to tell about it. I always thought that, just on a little bit of a tangent here, I always thought that Henry Godwin could have been like one of those mid-year in your house main event challengers against Brett or Sean as like a nasty, dirty heel, kind of like in a Bam Bam Bigelow or a Yokozuna type slot where you just move him up and down the card. I always thought Henry was a little bit underutilized, and then he got saddled with Finian, and Phineas, and it was over from there. But yeah, shout out to the Godwins.
Though if it wasn't for, that, we wouldn't have the wonderful Southern Justice.
Dude, Southern Justice is the best part of Jeff Jarrett's Fed run in the late 90s. Absolutely.
No, the best part of his Fed run in the late 90s is him teaming up with Owen. Because Owen
Yeah.
pulls him through good matches.
Yeah, it's tough for me to think about that one. Let's move on.
But yes, this is just still a really good song and holds up today, 34 years later. We then finished the album with Nikolai Volkov and Cara Mia, which we'll hear a little bit of now. Yeah, living the gimmick, shall we say, with Nikolai.
Yeesh. But at least the heel went over at the end. Nikolai got his heat back there with that national anthem. So of all the things on this record, the last thing I expected was the heel to go over.
But that's the whole point. Nikolai sings, Sheiky Baby sings, the national anthem goes over. Yeah, this as the last song, sort of, it washed over me quite a bit every time I've listened to it. And the only bit of sort of any of it that really sticks out is when he just starts breaking into the Russian national anthem, and I'm like, oh, that's Nikolai doing Nikolai's thing.
Yeah, he would pivot to that. You're right.
And yeah, no, we said it recently with one of the ECW shows where I will take bad over boring. This song, until the end, is just a bit boring. At least with that awful fucking Captain Lou song and the awful Land of a Thousand Dances and the JYD song, there's stuff to take out of that to rip on how bad it is. This is just boring until that end bit.
Yeah, it's just the thing of where Nikolai's kind of a one joke character, and they tried to apply that one joke to another much longer scenario where instead of him singing the Russian national anthem and I can't even say it, for 45 seconds or so to a heated crowd, he's singing a 2-minute, lounge song or whatever this is, and the joke goes stale really, really fast. And so I just think that if they had just had the national anthem on there, it would have been like the perfect way to end it. But it's fine. It's fine. It just wasn't, like you said. It's just boring. The joke kind of ruins itself when it tries to stretch it out for this long.
Yeah. So overall on this album, would you or will you listen to it again?
Oh no, probably not. But I'm glad I did.
It's on my iTunes. It's on my iPhone. I will probably keep a couple of songs on it.
Oh, I will listen to Real American many, many more times in my lifetime. Probably today or tomorrow, frankly. But probably never again Captain Lou or Jimmy Hart or Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, there's a lot of this that ain't gonna be staying on the iTunes. But it's one of those of it had to be done, because if we're gonna do, wrestling albums, we have to start with the WWF's original. So as I was saying earlier on, that you would all get a chance to hear this on Christmas Day. So at some point on Christmas Eve UK time and on Boxing Day UK time, I will be uploading the whole of this album for a 24-hour period or so. So it will go up at some point on Christmas Eve, and I will take it down at some point on Boxing Day. I will do a Dropbox with all 10 songs on there, so anyone that wants to can get a hold of them. Obviously, because of it being copyrighted, obviously we don't want to be giving it away for too long, so it's just a very, very short time offer as a Christmas present from your good friends at Wrestling 20 Years Ago, who says we never give you anything. We are going to be ending the show with a few playouts. So before we go into that, obviously, as always, if you have enjoyed this style of show, please give us some feedback. Obviously, there are a plethora of more WWF albums and WCW albums that we can do. Obviously, if you like hearing me and people like Eric or Rory talking about music, come over to Show and Tell with Tunes at STL and Tunes on Twitter, and just search Show and Tell with Tunes on iTunes and on Podbean, and you can hear what we talk about when it isn't time framed about wrestling, and have quite in depth and really actually good chats about music, and you know, a lot of different styles of music. You'll be surprised with some of the stuff that I listen to, but also the different stuff that Eric listens to, the different stuff that Rory listens to. It's always a good thing to get a fuller picture of your hosts on this project. Was there anything that you would like to pimp and share to the world, Eric?
No, man, I'm good. Show and tell with tunes, wrestling 20 years ago. That's all I've got. Maybe on Twitter at Modern Day Lawyer. But yeah, check it out. Let us know if you like these music ones, because we sure have a good time doing them. So let us know. And yeah, check out your Patreon on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. Check out the glory that is Captain Lou and George Animal Steel telling you about the history of music. Merry Christmas.
And obviously, we are recording this on the 1st of December. This will be going up in that first weekend. So I will give you a little bit of a heads up on what the December plan is for your normal shows. We have part 1 will be WCW and the Starrcade pay-per-view. Volume 2 will be WWF's Capital Carnage, which we're doing that as a standalone episode, as it was a UK-based pay-per-view. And we're just going to do that on its Todd. Volume 3 will be your full WWF show with everything else with Rock Bottom. Volume 4 is ECW and just a month of Hardcore TV. And Volume 5, it's that time of the year for the annual awards show and the introduction of the Wahoo Award for exceptional levels of shitness.
All right. As the crowd goes wild.
Yes, because as Super Brawls is officially dead because Tom decided to delete the Twitter, I'm bringing the Wahoo Award from there to here. The Wahoo McDaniel Award for everything that's bad and shit in wrestling now is part of the 20 years ago family of awards. And I've already got a few people that I'm thinking about that going for. So
we already had the Strongbow Award, though. Oh, wait. Never mind. That's a really old joke.
So we will be back with mass amounts of stuff for this month. We will be closing out the show with the Roddy Piper song for everybody, Derringer's Real American, and Hillbilly Jim's Don't Go Messing with Country Boy. And as I said, if you have enjoyed this musical show and like this style of show, please give us a shout on the Patreon message or on Facebook or Twitter. All feedback is wonderfully appreciated. And until later in the month, when we bring you your usual level of programming and the award special, goodbye.